At the time, in 2010, Eleanor was the only female to lead a NATO infantry combat subunit in Afghanistan. While no longer full-time, she still enjoys serving the Canadian Armed Forces in support of the 36th Brigade Group HQ in Halifax, Nova Scotia. In 2019, she was invested into the Order of Military Merit, which recognizes exceptional service. Now, she runs Eleanor Taylor Consulting, a company that supports the development of teams, leaders who thrive in adversity. Eleanor lives in Halifax with her 2 children. And so it's a great honor. Give a warm PLF welcome to Lieutenant Colonel Eleanor Taylor.
When I started my career, I resisted very strongly the idea of talking about my experience as a woman in the infantry. And the reason that I did that was because that I felt that there was this undercurrent of resentment, not to the fact that there was women in the infantry, but the fact that there was so much attention being placed on women in the infantry. And that there were all these really important issues in the infantry. You know, at the time we were integrating labs into our battalion. We had radios that didn't work. And yet all the politicians and the public seemed to care about when we were doing sharp training back in the 90s with X's and O's, as Major Matthews described, was the fact that we were not doing great on the integration of women in the infantry. And after I had had a few years in the battalion, my commanding officer said to me, he was an academic as well as a soldier, but he said to me, Eleanor, I'd like you to write an article about your experience as a woman in 1RCR. And I felt sick to my stomach. And I didn't really know why I felt sick to my stomach. All I knew was that I did not want to talk about this issue. I did not want to be the person who, when people looked at me, they saw that I was the one who acknowledged that there were still some problems and many successes associated with the integration of women in, at that time, the infantry. And so the great thing about being in the Army is when a colonel tells you you have to do something, you just have to do it. So I went through the process of writing this article and was able to articulate some of the successes and some of the things that I thought were challenges. And so what I hope to do for you tonight is to impart some of the friction points that still exist, both with how women feel in this uniform and how we collectively can work better as a diverse team. But also to remind you, as Major Matthews did so eloquently, that we are all part of a magnificent story of integration. And they came in loud and clear just before I went to Afghanistan, and I asked myself how devastating it would be for the success of women in the combat arms if I were to fail at this. And that was a ridiculous thing to think, because there were lots of other women who had done equally exciting things and challenging things, and yet I felt this great pressure. And I remind you that all of the people who are diverse in your organization are feeling that pressure, whether you're applying it to them or not. And finally, before we get into any questions, I just want you to respect the magnificence of our organization and your part in it, and do your best to move it forward in the direction that it can move in.